Welcome back to Holistic Healing Association. Today, I have a special guest with me.
Hi, I am Ruta. I am embodied processing practitioner, holistic coach, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm really passionate about healing and trauma work. It's my my life is dedicated to that work. I also love nature, and I also see the nature in each of us, in our bodies, and how our bodies can heal naturally, just because it's we have this inherent nature in us.
And what's your background?
So I'm coming from Lithuania originally. I've been in UK, living in UK for nearly 12 years. And um, when I was a teenager, like 17, I felt like I needed a change from Lithuania. And I had an opportunity to come here to London to look for my way in the world, I guess, my place in the world. And I started as a chef working in the kitchen. I worked in one of the best jazz clubs in London. It's called Ronnie Scott's. And during that time, I became a vegan, vegetarian, actually vegetarian, then vegan, and moved to work as a vegan chef. So I got very much into nutrition. That was about 10, 11 years ago. And I also started going to Buddhist temples to also search for meaning in my life because I felt like just working wasn't enough. And I also felt like there's something missing in my life, like a meaning, and especially spiritual meaning. So going to Buddhist temples kind of opened a wider perspective on the world, which was very much about the mind and studying your own mind and how we think and how we see the world. And then at 21, maybe like 4 years being in London, I had an opportunity to go to a ceremony, to a plant medicine ceremony. And I also had an opportunity to work in one of the best vegan restaurants in London. And at that time, I was very deeply involved in plant-based foods and nutrition and health and well-being. I had mentors who helped me to kind of navigate that path, teaching me different kinds of um, ways of healing through food and this kind of holistic approach. And in that ceremony, which happened about 9 years ago now, I had significant insights into what I've been carrying, but I did not know. And a lot of it was bringing me back to my home country and understanding how um, our parents, our ancestors kind of pass on things to us. And sometimes it's really difficult to make sense of it, but we can feel it. And there's this felt sense of carrying maybe heaviness or some sort of burden. And that was the first time when I got in touch with it. And I had the visions, but I couldn't make sense of it. It was quite overwhelming. And I felt like I could never unsee it after that ceremony. And that was like a new chapter of my life opening up. And I dedicated my life in kind of understanding what was it? Like,
And
what
what kind
was
of
that all
visions?
about?
What kind of visions was it?
So at the time, I was very strict on my diet. With my diet, I used to have some eating disorders for a while. I was very um, self-conscious about my looks, my body. And a lot of those visions was about me seeing myself, how I see myself. And it's quite critical, like very critical, very harsh. And I realized that this harshness is coming from my ancestral wounds. that someone was harsh on my parents, on my grandparents, and so on. And I was carrying this harshness like an inner critic and doing that to myself, punishing myself for eating, then restricting, and then overeating, and then feeling really bad, and then again punishing for not having control over food. And I was involved deeply into working with food. So that was like my life at the time. And I had to kind of change my views on food as well. Instead of being so critical and harsh on how I eat or what I eat, and also being on others as well. At the time, being vegan, I would really harshly judge people who were eating meat or not healthy, and I would argue with them and get into fights. So the vision was really about seeing myself as this harsh person that I was towards myself, towards others, and yet trying to be a Buddhist at the time, stilling my mind or quieting my inner critic, and how that wasn't actually working for me, and I had to work on that energy that I was carrying and was manifesting as this harsh inner critic.
And what do you mean by energy?
Energy. That's a very good question. Um, so energetically speaking, we all have energy, right, in our bodies, and we use that energy in different ways, moving uh, through the world. Um, when we are at work, we have one kind of self energy. When we are at home, relaxing, we might have different self energy. And also how we talk to ourselves internally, that also this kind of energetic frequency, I would say, that we're putting on ourselves, how we feel, emotions. So seeing the world almost like energy, or we say someone has a bad energy. I don't like being around this person because it's just awful energy that this person kind of emanates. So harsh energy is something that really disturbs you internally. It's like you hear a voice perhaps. So we always talking to ourselves. So hearing a voice is very harsh on your choices, how you show up in the world, how you perceived. And I know now that these voices are trying to help us. It's just the parts of us that learn that this is how I can make you better human being. Um, and yeah, they carry certain energy, right?
I understand. That
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. Thank you for explaining.
You're welcome.
And where do you believe this inner critic was coming from?
Yeah, so with my current eyes, when I look back, back then I was very much like a nice person. I was considering myself to be a nice person. I was vegan, Buddhist. I tried not to harm anyone or cause any harm. But I realized I was harming myself every day on everyday basis. And eventually I met a therapist, like 4 years later or so, whom I started working with because a lot of my relationship wasn't working because of this inner voice, and eventually would come into relationship as well. And I would feel so ashamed of bringing that into the relationship. So when I started working with a therapist and exploring my internal dynamics, I realized that this voice wasn't what I thought it was. I thought that's just my voice. This is how I talk to myself. But then I realized that that's just a part of me, and that part is being neglected by me. I haven't been listening or hearing it. And also, most people have it. I didn't realize that most people have this voice as well. And when I started exploring it, I realized that it was my suppressed anger, that I did not express anger. I did not have boundaries. I did not say no to people when they were mistreating me. And that led me to ex getting very curious about what other parts I have in my nervous system and my psyche. Then I went to learn about shadow work, and I went to one of the seminars, shadow work seminars. where it's like a psychodrama. So you act different parts out.
Well, that's
And I had
interesting.
the opportunity to really step into that inner critic and feel the energy of that inner critic. And that's where my power was. That was the first time I realized this is where my power is. This is where my boundaries is. This is where my self-dignity is. And this is what I've been looking for, but I've been pushing it away. And it was kind of in the background, uh, like this critical voice kind of behind me, just like, you need to do this better. You kind of perfectionist standards coming in. Um, so that took a while to get to that point. But that was so transformative for me to just consciously own that part, that shadow that I had, and realizing that most people have it, but they don't know that they do. And they just do the same thing that I did for many years. And going even deeper to that, I realized that this is something that comes from my ancestors, from my parents, my grandparents, and coming from Lithuania. I don't know if anyone knows much about Lithuanian history, but we had Soviet occupation, we had Nazi occupation, where people were massively killed, and there was the concentration camps. So where I grew up, basically, I grew up on a land where there was the concentration camps, and my first school that I went to was built on a Jewish cemetery after, where people were buried after the concentration camp. And I could feel as a child that there is this big weight waiting people. And I could feel it just like weighting me down or pushing me down. And of course, all the demands of the society to do better, to be better, to, have these high standards. And as a child, I couldn't cope really. It was too much for me. So I zoned out. I kind of disconnected and I had very hard time to be present at school. And I realized even then, I already had this harsh voice inside me, which was around me, people trying to push me forwards, do better, be better, you're not good enough, kind of saying to me. And until much later, I just realized that actually most people are feeling these days as if they're not good enough. And
It's
that's
very
like a
true.
collective, it's a collective wound that we all carry. And if you even want to go deeper into it, someone is benefiting from it. That's what it feels to me. Um, like, for example, if you want to sell a beauty cream to someone, you can't sell it uh, if they feel good about their skin or they feel good about themselves. So this sense of lack, not enough, actually helps to run the system in the way that people consume more because they feel like they need to fill this void inside. And someone like me who's a searcher, I've been searching my whole life and trying to understand since I was a child, watching people and analyzing and trying to make sense of my world around me. I realized that this is things that is collective in our collective unconscious. And according to Carl Jung, collective unconscious is a real thing. And we all somewhat connected in that collective unconscious. And one of the main wounds, I think, is the sense of lack, that we are all in lack. So yeah, understanding myself helped me understand human race or humanity at large.
Yes, it makes a lot of sense. And just to clarify for everyone watching,
Mm-hmm.
like for example, yes, I also have parts. Everyone has parts. So that would be example coming from internal family systems where
Right,
we all
yeah.
have parts. And sometimes, for example, shadow work would be
Mm-hmm.
when we have parts of ourselves that we don't like, and
Mm-hmm.
we try and push them down and pretend they're not there. And when we
Yeah.
push our parts down, they can become louder and more dominant instead of
Exactly.
exploring them, becoming curious and allowing and loving all of our parts so that we can be whole
Exactly.
as a person.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And that's where I'm now in my life, learning to embrace all of my parts with compassion and curiosity. And at this stage in my life, I rarely hear my inner critic as loud as it used to be. Actually, it doesn't get as loud as it used to be. Sometimes it might get louder if I have a lot of demands in the world, but that's just a sign that I need to slow down. So I have it more as a friend now when it reminds me, oh, it's time to slow down now. You don't have to, do all of this right now. We can take a break. So it's more like a supportive figure, which is I would say is a massive transformation. And I haven't had any eating issues or food related issues for years. Um, and my nervous
That's
system
amazing.
as well. I can
Yes.
sleep. I can sleep. I used to have enormous uh, nightmares at night. And a lot of my subconscious material would come up in the nightmares. So to do with my ancestors, like I said, and my family, and having that heavy energy kind of pushing down, it would come up in my nightmares. Even if I was trying to push away and run away from it, doing all sort of things, soothing with food, um, looking for that perfect partner. Anytime I go to sleep, it would come up again. So it's like whatever I was doing, it would come up in a relationship as well. And I'm so glad that I actually decided to make friends with it. That changed my life, really.
Because it gives you a sense of peace. And even this type of work helps us allows us to get to know ourselves better. And
Absolutely, yeah.
I have been told for a very long time by a friend of mine that this is spiritual. And I kept on
Mm.
saying, no, it's not. And they kept saying, oh, yes, it is. I was like, that's not spiritual. And I've never heard of it being spiritual. And then a Catholic nun actually told me it is spiritual because the more you get to know your core, the more you
Yes,
get to know your soul, the more you get to
absolutely.
know your true essence. Um, and that's who God created you to be.
Yes,
You're
actually,
genuine self.
on this topic, my mom was a Christian, and she used to tell me things like, if you act like this or like that, according to her, in whatever ways it's not agreeable, maybe if I speak too loud or I get angry or something, she used to say that God will punish you for this. So I really learned that I can't be myself, because it was like a love loves you only conditionally. That was my kind of idea about spirituality or God at the time. And now I realize that's not true. That's simply not true. And because God is capable of complete love,
I
we
agree.
can also use that love within ourselves at the core of our being to expand and embrace all of who we are. We don't have to exile parts of ourselves to please someone,
I agree
not God,
because
for sure.
the core of who he created us to be.
Yeah. And as you mentioned earlier about internal family system, that's also something that's been very influential for me in my healing journey in terms of being someone who's interested in spirituality and in healing. I often used to split these two worlds separate, and I've been looking for approaches that was including as well as embodied processing as well, embracing the spiritual aspect of a human being, because I always felt like spirituality is so important for healing, and we can do both. We don't have to just look at the neuroscience and do everything scientific, you know, how the brain functions. Like, that's good to know, right? But if we just do it scientifically and dry and kind of disconnected, that won't include the full of human expression. Is we also spiritual beings and we need that relational aspect. We need meaning and this kind of ritualistic aspect where we can create a healing container, which ancient cultures been using for centuries, for a very long time. And I think we're missing that in our current society, this idea about containers where people can come in safety and heal.
I agree.
Yeah, and
And
we're not raised to know about what is the safe container. And I think people like you or me, that's why we are here to kind of remind people that there's safety in the world and we can create it and contain it.
I think this is beautiful. I love talking to you because I think some diverse spiritual beliefs, but
Mhm.
when we sit down and talk and compare notes, it's not all
Mhm.
complete opposite. And there's definitely
Yeah.
some common ground.
Yes. Looking deeper into spirituality, no, I'm very passionate about spirituality. That's something that um, it really fulfills me, like exploring spirituality and different paths of spirituality. And one of the qualities of spirituality is compassion, this compassion for all living beings, and of course for every part of ourselves. I think it should be included because sometimes we kind of want to help others and feel compassion for other people, but we miss out ourselves and different aspects of ourselves. I think it's important to include our own beings, especially, someone who is caring, very caring people.
That's a really important note to make, to
For
always
sure.
make sure we're also compassionate to ourselves.
Exactly. Because often we find that it's much easier to be compassionate to a dog, a cat, a friend, family member. But then when we are by ourselves, we internally punishing ourselves. What you said, what you did, how you're not enough.
And so many people do not feel good enough. I know I have also experienced that in my life.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I've done many sessions on people and they're coming in not feeling good enough.
Hmm.
And there's healing that needs to be done there, but it is possible.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
how has embodied processing impacted your life?
Hmm. So my therapist that I mentioned, first therapist, or one of the first therapists that I was working with, she was a talking therapist, and I worked with her for nearly 4 years. And at some point through talking, I realized that I wasn't getting to the root cause of my issues because I was kind of spiraling. I talk about the same thing over and over again, and I leave the office and I have the same symptoms resurfacing. And it was very much like a body felt. Like I couldn't really explain with words some of the things that was coming up, but I was just feeling it's in my body. Like talking not gonna do it. And when I began studying embodied processing, I it was like a light bulb moment. Like this is it. Like I found it. This is what I need. I need to get into my body and I need to understand these sensations from more felt sense, not intellectually. 'Cause it's almost like I was cognitively bypassing my symptoms or my somatic symptoms. And talking helped me, of course. It made sense when I was talking, but it wasn't resolving the root cause of it. So when I began going more down from my head downwards into my body, I began really experiencing what it felt to be me, what it felt to be in my body, what it felt to carry all that weight that I had. And I also followed my body, how how does it wants to work with it and how it wants to release it in a way or process it. And I felt like my body just knew what to do with it. I just had to create a right container with compassion and just be present to it and just follow it and allow it to do what it knows how to do. And also, parts language really helped because I knew that I can be present and I can also be in the past simultaneously. And some of my memories was from school, like being not accepted or being different, because I always felt like I was different, like something about me is not like everyone else. And going to that little girl and really embracing her and holding her as I was working with that somatically and really feeling how she felt, but also channeling this compassion from my present self and asking what did she need that she did not have back then, and how can I give that to her in this present moment, and also asking her how do you want to release that. And sometimes she wanted to shake it off and move around. um, Sometimes she wanted to take it to the lake or the river and put it in the river. And slowly, through building relationship with her, I felt lighter and lighter in my body. And my body became more, even I felt like I became more flexible in a way, like I can stretch deeper, I can breathe deeper, I feel softer inside. I don't have this intensity in my head or, like a kind of like tension being held like in my shoulders, in my head. Felt like everything just kind of begun like ice melting, like becoming more fluid. So I would say embodied processing helped me to release that stagnation, like that stagnant energy. That, yeah, it's been there for a long time. It felt like some of it was not even mine, or not from my lifetime. Um, and some of it from people around me, but it was like more put on me, like a weight. Like someone just gave me this weight and I've been carrying it on my shoulders. And
And it didn't
yeah,
belong to
like,
you.
yeah, exactly, it did not belong to me, but I was carrying as if it was mine. And I was trying to um, do something with it, but it's very difficult to do something with something that is not yours to deal with, if that makes sense. Um, but what was mine, I was able to process it and work through it. And yes, some stuff was just like giving it back, or yeah, establishing boundaries. And anger work was one of the most significant things for me to explore. I think as women and many women in society are not allowed to be angry. It's like if you are a nice person, if you are a good woman, um, you shouldn't be angry, right? That's kind of like big belief that's been put on
That's correct.
female females and probably men too. Like I don't want to exclude that. It's just that I can talk from my experience and seeing other women, or be a good girl. Good girls don't get angry. So yeah, so we completely exclude that and we take on burdens from other people and we take it, and then many women get sick, ill. Yeah.
That is so true because when we repress our emotions, and one of the most common emotions we can repress
Yeah,
is anger, it can actually make us ill.
right. Yes.
It can cause
And
us anxiety, depression, autoimmune
yeah,
diseases, you name it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I used to have these enormous headaches and nightmares. Like I said, I'm like the nicest person. I'm trying to be the nicest person I can be, helping others. But then when I go to sleep, I have nightmares and I have headaches, and I'm just not feeling good about myself, or being very picky about my looks or how I eat, like very this perfectionistic standards. Um, and yeah, and it was so much to do with suppressed anger that I could never understand, why was I carrying this energy that was turned towards me when it meant to be turned outwards, and something that had to be expressed to other people.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And what
And
advice
that
would
was
you,
my
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that that was my confidence. That's where my confidence was. That feeling of not good enough. It was the secret to feeling good enough or feeling courage and confidence. It actually wasn't my anger.
When you were able to feel into your anger,
Yeah,
are you saying you were able to start feeling a little bit more confident?
absolutely. Like, if you allow the anger to come up as you feel that in your body, it feels like a pure power,
I felt
but
it.
when we exile this energy, these aspects of ourselves that also gets exiled with it, like confidence, courage. And as like allow that to come up, and I could just feel this enormous energy just rising and like really filling me up. And when I wasn't judging it, because in the beginning I was judging it, there's a part of me just said like, oh, just push it down. Don't you allow this energy to come up. It was quite scary in the beginning. But as I was kind of soothing that voice in my mind, that was pushing it down, like it's safe, it's okay, we are safe now to experience this. And I allowed it. It actually became quite blissful experience. I was using this energy for dancing, for moving, for jumping around, and sometimes pushing as well, like this natural response when someone's crossing your boundaries to push. And I allowed my body to do that and push and really explore what this energy wants to do. And I just felt so confident. I was like, I never felt confident, but now I do. And I know what confidence feels like. It's just power and courage to stand up for yourself, stand your ground, and really embrace who you are with this self-respect and dignity, which I was missing for a long time.
That's amazing.
Hmm.
And what advice would you have for our viewers?
I would say if you notice that you're hard on yourself and perhaps that voice is not that friendly inside you, maybe you have some perfectionistic standards for yourself, just get curious about it instead of judging yourself or allowing that voice completely to consume you. Get curious about what is this about and how can I help this voice, this part of me, myself, my body, to just simply be with it, embrace it with compassion. And if you need help with that, find a practitioner that has experience working with it and see your life transforming.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
You're very welcome. It's been amazing being here. I have a website, rutajanus.com. I have Instagram, RUTA underscore FRUTA, Ruta Fruta. And yeah, if you have any questions or you want to reach out to me, I would love to hear from you. Um, like you can tell if you watch this far that I'm very passionate about this topic and something I do right now in my life. I help other people to find their power in themselves, empowerment, and also compassion for who they are and being who they really are and they want to be rather than what society told them to be or these burdens that they've been carrying.
Well, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
And thank you, everyone, for watching today. And we invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel.